But yes, good evening. Hi everyone, my name's Tom Willmott. Some of you may know our Instagram profile that myself and my family have been running, which is Wild Garden Revival. It's been going for a couple of years now. So yeah, just going to talk you through some of the things that we've been doing here down in Bedminster to make our garden a little bit more wild. Okay, so kind of where we started off was it's about 9 years ago now, almost, that we've moved in. We kind of got lucky from the off in that we bought a house with a large garden, and it's a bit of a sort of unusually large garden for Bedminster, for those of you that know it. And it's pretty much the sole reason why we bought the house, because we knew that one day we'd want to do something with it. Yeah, and it's a terrace garden. It's sort of L-shaped around the back. There's quite a height change from front to back. And the people that lived there before had been there for about 50 years, and you can tell they put a lot of love into the garden. They love their rose beds and sort of formal planting, and yeah, so you could see there was lots of good soil there, and it had it gone a little bit past its best, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, we knew we wanted to do something with it. So for a few years we kind of just did different things, like sort of growing veg, and we had some chickens sort of free roaming the garden for about 2 or 3 years. I think initially when we did tidy it up, we had our wedding reception in the garden, believe it or not, with a big marquee and everything. So we did lots of different things. But when we had our children, so Eli and Ida, who are now 3 and 5, we knew we kind of needed to kind of create a sort of more sort of permanent space. But importantly, that kind of met sort of three different things that we needed from the garden. So one was a family space, which is sort of, I guess, fairly obvious, in terms of somewhere to play, somewhere to create and have a bit of fun, having people over. The other one is productivity. So actually being able to grow things, because that's something we've always been doing, and we were interested in doing that. And of course, wildlife. And I think sort of looking around at a lot of the examples we've seen, it was quite difficult to find something that kind of worked all together. But that was kind of our sort of real focus, was just to try and make those 3 elements work together. So whenever we felt like we hadn't really met that, we would just sort of challenge ourselves, and that's kind of been like a guiding principle all the way through. So I'll take you through some of the things that we've done. So I think one of the bits we're probably most proud of is our wildlife pond, which we all sort of dug as a family. It's about 1.5 years ago. Used lots of the sort of natural stone that was lying around the garden and sort of lined it with clay, and went to Grow Wilder and brought lots of the wildlife plugs, and had some excellent advice from Rachel and Sean over the years, going back and forth. Yeah, it's just been amazing. It's just been so beautiful. It's really sort of settled in well. We've got a wildflower green roof right next to it as well, so it kind of gives a sort of really nice sort of backdrop. And this has just been an absolute haven for wildlife. I mean, it's they talk about water being the most important element in the garden. It's just been, yeah, absolutely incredible just to watch the insects and everything come in. As soon as that water is there. This is the front of the house down here in the bottom right hand corner. So on the previous slide, you can see there was quite a lot of concrete. We've removed, I think, probably the best part of about 20 tons of concrete in and around the garden. And we've lifted and shifted about 30 tons of clay, believe it or not. So the main aim here was actually just to recreate it as almost like as one space. So our front garden is now essentially the beginnings of a mini food forest. So what that means is we're trying to recreate the sort of the system that a woodland or a forest provides. So we have fruit trees as a canopy, and then we're going to be putting in shrubs in the sort of as a sort of sub canopy layer, and then sort of ground plants will be things like mint and marjoram and wild strawberry as a sort of crawling base layer, and then on the bottom will be a sort of a mulch in which we're going to be growing mushrooms, sort of wine cap mushrooms. So we've already laid those in the ground. They're sort of already sort of spreading, hopefully. So within a couple of years, we should have a front garden that is is a haven for wildlife. It's got lots of variety, lots of decay, but is also hopefully completely edible as well. So we can just walk out there and pick things as and when we need to. And the great thing about it being a system is that it's kind of largely self-sustaining. So there's not too much management. So other things we've done as well, on the left-hand side is a dead hedge bin store. We wanted a dead hedge, weren't really sure where to put it, but we also wanted to build a bin store. So we thought, okay, well, we'll combine the two and we'll do a dead hedge bin store. It's been amazing, really, how much material that takes. It took all of our prunings and everything last year, and I even took some from my brother, and I think I even took some random person's Christmas tree, which was about 4 months dead. I think they thought I was a bit mad, but I was happy to have it because I'm trying to fill the thing up. And yeah, I've actually allowed the bindweed to grow up. We've got the dreaded bindweed, which you know, you got to try and love your weeds, but bindweed is a little bit testing at times. But even that has actually added a nice sort of splash of colour. So we're growing up with that, and it's amazing how many moths will sort of overnight in this. You sort of walk past and brush it, and they all sort of come flying out. We've taken that a little bit further, so we've sort of kept the sort of decay theme. So you can't really see it there, but on top of the sort of black bin store, it's more like a brown roof, I guess, but I'm calling it a mush roof. So essentially, we got decaying mass in there, so straw and wood chip, and we're trying to grow wine cap mushrooms in there. So it's kind of a slight alternative to a green roof, because it's in a shady spot. So yeah, fingers crossed that will work. Other things we've done, we've put up bird boxes. The one sort of center top there is a bird box with the old Christmas wreath in front of it. We did have a sort of robin scoping out, but it didn't go into it, unfortunately, but fingers crossed this year. And down at the bottom there, we got bee cob blocks. So that's essentially just the clay, which we've been digging up by the ton. Just mixing it up with a little bit of straw, making it into a brick and just poking some holes in it. And yeah, the bees have loved it. The solitary bees, they've been using those all sort of summer, going in and out, you know, creating their nest. So it's been really sort of fascinating to watch, and you know, getting the kids involved. The top right there, we have a wildlife camera and a hedgehog house, which has been in use. So the wildlife camera has just been it's a great insight into the garden and what's going on. And of course, the kids love running out in the morning and sort of, you know, grabbing it and then seeing what videos come about. And the bottom right there, we've made some more bird boxes, some swift boxes. So they only went up end of last year. Unfortunately, we didn't get any this year, but we'll keep them up there. So sort of build it and they will come approach. I think another important part, which is really important to us, is involving the kids in pretty much everything, really. So in the top left, we were doing some flyering on the street with the hedgehog project, the BS3 hedgehog project. So going around and trying to get the neighbours involved. Bottom left there, that's I think it was a broad-bodied chaser dragonfly, which we had in the pond. So we're sort of making sure that the kids aren't, you know, sort of grossed out by insects or anything like that. They're able to go up and, you know, touch them and sort of handle them carefully and just make sure that, you know, they can fully appreciate what they've helped create, really, with the pond and all the wildlife that's brought in. We've been doing other things like moth trapping, even sort of rescuing a stray Contoniaster out the back lane, which we knew would have got the chop from the landowner. So we quickly went out and rescued it, and planted that out the front. So yeah, nothing's going to waste. And the top right there, that's my daughter with a damselfly nymph. So yeah, doing a little bit of sort of we did some citizen science actually with one of the museums in terms of sending some pond samples and yeah, taking photos of things in our pond. So yeah, just trying to get them involved in all aspects of it, really, and just try and give them that sort of understanding and respect for nature. And then yeah, moving on to the productivity part. So because of the way we grow our food, which is like with the mini food forest, which is in its beginnings, as I mentioned, and also the one in the middle there, it's called a hugel bed. So that's essentially an old, like, decaying tree that's sort of sunk into the ground, and all the kind of wood chip and grass cuttings, or any sort of green waste essentially just goes on top of that. So it provides a great sort of habitat for lots of insects and everything, but at the same time gives us a really great growing medium, which it's got a constant sort of nutrient input. So it's a really sort of novel way of growing food. And the tomatoes are just going absolutely crazy at the minute. And then doing the sort of typical things like, you know, growing spuds. We've got mulberries in the bottom left corner, so that's part of the food forest at the front. We got medlar and quince as well. That's all coming up at the minute, those two. So it's, you know, it's really nice to kind of just walk home and actually, rather than sort of walk past your front garden, you give it a quick scan and see what's come up and what you can eat, and or, you know, what's about to come into ready to be picked. And of course the wildlife, all these little things are adding up. We are, getting more wildlife into the garden. We do have a lot of challenges, I think, especially with the birds, because we've got quite a large open space and there's not too many trees around where we live. But we have had sparrows drinking from the pond. We had blue tits nesting last year. The dragonflies have probably been the most impressive. They've just been such a beautiful sight to see them, coming and laying eggs, in the pond, and then emerging a year later. And that's just been a real source of fascination for the kids. We took the option of putting the ponds outside the kitchen window, so that whenever we're kind of in the house, we can still see all the goings on in the pond. And then, when we see something there, we can sort of quickly run out and take a picture. We're letting sort of different plants grow in the garden, things like ragwort. I think a lot of people would kind of take a sharp intake of breath when you mention ragwort, but actually it's fairly harmless as long as you're sort of not eating it and rubbing yourself on it too much. And that of course brings in the wildlife that you wouldn't see otherwise, things like the cinnabar moth caterpillars, and things like the hedgehog. The hedgehog is hedgehogs, did I say? Several hedgehogs. We've seen them flirting and courting each other and fighting and scrapping in the garden. And of course, living in there, they seem to sort of move around the garden and sleep in lots of different places. So again, that's it's another really sort of lovely piece to have in the garden. And the final picture there is of a holly blue on the holly, which I think had been planted for only a matter of weeks at that point. So really chuffed to see that actually you can just add something and then straight away wildlife, nature just comes along and finds it. And I think that's it. It's been really sort of eye-opening, I think, in terms of just how much you can do in terms of when you want to actually bring the wildlife into the garden, just actually sitting down and just taking the time to put those things in place, and then when you actually just observe it, you really do notice those changes. And I think it becomes a little bit addictive. The kids have certainly really gotten into their nature, which has just been really encouraging. And we got lots more things planned. I think please keep an eye on the Instagram. If you're on the platform, come and give us a shout. We do the Bedminster Secret Gardens this year, and I think we're going to be doing it again in a couple of years' time. So if anyone wants to visit the garden, then please by all means do. Just say thank you for the opportunity for letting us share, really, because I think that's one of the important things that sort of Julie mentioned at the top of the call was we were doing all these things and really benefiting from it as a family, but then realized that actually we weren't really sharing it enough, although we were sharing it on Instagram. So we've kind of taken more steps to talk about it, things like this with this call, and we've done a couple of other initiatives and a couple of other sort of videos and interviews. I think that's just a really sort of key point is do share, do talk about what you're doing, and you find out actually there's a lot of people that are interested and want to hear what you're doing.